Have you been looking at the news, seeing all the redistricting, the protests happening in Alabama, Tennessee, Mississippi, Louisiana, and you're wondering what is going on? Or I just don't understand how this decision from the Supreme Court got us here. We're asking the same questions, and today we have a special guest again to answer them. I'm Mallory Hagan, and this is Pretty Furious. All right, friends, welcome back. Just me, solo dolo this week. Maggie is unfortunately attending a funeral service this morning. It is Friday, May 8th when we're recording this, and lots has happened this week. I mean, we had the first woman trainer win the Kentucky Derby. We've had Louisiana v. Calais, which is what we're going to be talking about today. Since then, protests have erupted across the country and specifically in the South regarding redistricting. On top of all of that, Monday, May 11th, which is the deadline for the mifepristone decision. I mean, there's just so much going on. Before we get into today's episode, which will be brief, I want to remind you that we would love for you to be following us. We are everywhere at Pretty Furious Pod, but our main home is over on Substack, so make sure you're following us there. And do be sure to give the Siren Network a follow as well on all platforms. We want to make sure you're getting the content from the other creators that are a part of the Siren too. And as always, we can't be pretty furious without being pretty first. We do have product recs in our show notes, so be sure and check those out as well. Now, today, lots to be furious about because, gestures around broadly. However, the Department of Justice this morning, the thing that's making me pretty furious, sent down a memo to everyone who's in the Department of Justice, basically reiterating that there is to be no consideration for DEI in any practices across our government, across our Department of Justice. And so this memo is calling for people to basically out their colleagues or government contractors, whomever, regarding any consideration of diversity, equity, or inclusion in hiring practices or contracting. So, in addition to the Supreme Court decision this past week that we're going to get into, this doubling down, I guess, on eliminating any DEI practices has me wanting to quote, I think it was Patrick Sellers here in Alabama who said, they're no longer in sheets and hoods. Now they're just in suits and ties, right? It's like, it's policy after executive order, after commentary, talking about how there's essentially reverse discrimination against, mediocre white boys. So this memo that came down today is in addition to, I'm not sure if you all are paying attention to the fact that the Justice Department has a bounty program right now that urges employees to file whistleblower complaints against any corporate DEI initiatives that this administration, it's like the False Claims Act investigations. So they've got it for federal contractors. They're prompting settlements I think it was IBM, it was a $17 million payment because they want large firms and corporations to curtail or replace DEI programs. So this is just all coming to a head, the white supremacy of it all, right? Everything is about eliminating any advancement, any consideration, any equity or equality for people of color, whether that's people of color who have immigrated here from somewhere else or people of color whose ancestors built this country. That said, lots to be angry about, but also it's important for us to understand, right? Burying our heads in the sand in this very moment is doing nothing but allowing them to continue getting away with these things. And so that's why I've brought back today Suraj Patel. He was on the show a few weeks ago talking about ICE and the history of immigration enforcement. He is a lawyer and activist. He's a professor of business ethics at NYU. And he's run for Congress as a Democrat in New York's 12th. That's actually how we met. He's a veteran of both Barack Obama's presidential campaigns, and he has worked as an associate for the Obama White White House. He was born to immigrants. He is a first-generation American, and he is just a wealth of knowledge. I'm excited for him to help us better understand the Supreme Court decision, Louisiana v. Calais, and also to make sense of what's coming next. What are our options, and how can we combat this level of gerrymandering and racial discrimination across the country? Let's welcome Suraj Patel. All right, Suraj, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us to explain just like, I don't know, what the fuck is going on. So maybe take us back. Like, why are we here? What led us to this moment where all of the states are suddenly redistricting to remove, representation for Black voters? How did we get here?
Oh boy, it's a it's a big one, but I'll take it because I like it. Well, I don't like it, but truth is that gerrymandering has always existed in the country. It's actually a funny story. So this guy named Elbridge Gerry, who was the governor of North Carolina, drew a map of Congressional District that looked like a salamander, and so we call it a gerrymander because it's like Jerry and Mander. But anyway, it's like legal along partisan lines. So let's just rewind a second. Already this year, you've been hearing about gerrymandering, and it's like a little complex sounding, but it's actually pretty simple. So in gerrymandering, voters don't get to choose their politicians. The politicians choose their voters. That is that the guys who draw the lines for who is going to vote for them are also the ones. It's like I had a professor in law school who used to say that politics is the only game where the players are also the umpires. That they get to determine the rules of the game to keep themselves on the field. And it's like really messed up, obviously, in a modern democracy that we still have this thing. So even before the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act, which we'll get to, all year you've been hearing about gerrymandering, I'm sure, on the radio or, well, I really aged myself on your podcast. and you're like, what is this about? And the basic premise is that you get to draw up maps based on partisan leaning, and it's even more prevalent today because it used to be every decade when the census happened, but now Republicans really started doing gerrymandering in the middle of decades, in the middle of election cycles, as we're seeing. And with Google Maps and AI, it's even more scary because it can be really precise about which block to add in to their area and put it into somebody else's and really carve up voters.
Well, and just to a little aside there, we have seen in places like Alabama, when maps are redrawn, there are some really prominent Democratic voices here. Some people who have run for office before, myself included, but I'm not included in what I'm about to say. There are some Democratic voices here that are extremely prominent. As maps have been redrawn, I kid you not, their homes have been drawn into other districts. Like they can be so precise as to draw houses. Yeah.
Yes.
And I was going to say, I also think it's just really important for people to understand that these are not done by like outside firms. They're not done by nonpartisan firms or nonpartisan organizations. I mean, these are the very people who are currently elected in office. So in Alabama, a supermajority Republican state legislature is now determining, for the second time this decade, by the way, who gets access, I guess, to choosing their representative. So they draw people out of their districts.
And let's just zoom out for a second, guys, to what this means simply. Okay, Tennessee today just broke up the last Democratic district in Tennessee this morning, which is in Memphis, into 3 districts, and just added these people in from Memphis. So there will be 0 Democratic representatives to the U.S. Congress from Tennessee. Tennessee is a conservative state, no doubt. But about 40% of people still voted for Kamala Harris. So when I say it's conservative, it's still 40-60. So if there were 10 seats and it was proportional, then 4 of them would be Democrats, 6 would be Republicans. Instead, we're going to get a map where 100% are Republican. That's as like simply put as how this works. So that's gerrymandering. That's political gerrymandering. Now let's throw race into it, because Supreme Court did something last week that accelerated it one more time this round of gerrymandering. So we're seeing it again in Alabama, in Tennessee, across the South. So we had the Civil War. Okay. We fought an entire war in this country, the most deadly war in U.S. history by multiples, to make sure that a multiracial democracy can exist in this country, that Black people have equal rights, especially in the South, but also in the North, frankly, in cities, and to be able to vote. And so the 13th
Pause.
Amendment for
Pause. What would
Mhm.
you say to someone who might be listening who thinks to themselves, no, the Civil War was about the economy?
Yeah, so it was, when you consider that labor was free for a bunch of people in the
Yeah.
South. Okay, that's economics, I guess. Civil War was about slavery, like hook, line, and sinker. This lost cause thing, this more remortalization or immortalization of Robert E. Lee, etc., is ridiculous. Um, and every serious historian can tell you that the Civil War is about slavery, and two different systems of how the economy, if we want to call it economics, should work. Um, and so, we did this. Okay. So what happened at the end of the the middle of the Civil War? We passed 3 amendments. We passed the 13th, the 14th, and the 15th Amendment. The 13th abolished slavery. The 14th guaranteed equal protection. The 15th guaranteed equal voting rights and enfranchisement for Black men and later then women in the South. This is a big deal because the 15th Amendment was never practically enforced. And I say that because for the next 100 years or so, Jim Crow happened in the South after Reconstruction. And what Jim Crow is about is that Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee came up with every effing way to make sure Black people didn't get to vote. Okay? So the 15th
Yes.
Amendment existed in
Well, can
practice.
we just like
Mhm.
an example of that?
Yes.
So for those of you who maybe didn't get as in the weeds as you should have in your history classes. I mean, when we say like every way to not vote, there are people in Alabama right now whose grandmothers had to count the bubbles on a bar of soap, who had to count the threads in the sleeve of their jacket. I'm talking like, it's not just like, can you read this sentence, even though that would also be, wrong. It was absurd things to ask someone to do in order to have access to their right. So continue. Sorry.
Totally. So you can make tests, right? Like a lot of us have kids. A lot of us understand examinations and testing. But what if those tests are administered in completely different ways for different students? That is
Uh-huh.
to say, I've got a literacy test. Mallory walks up to me and I say, "To vote, Mallory, you are this white woman. I know you're going to vote this way. So I'm going to be like, read this sentence." And it says, like, the dog ate the cat. That doesn't actually happen. But anyway, whatever. It was a very, very random example. But
You were
anyway,
thinking of small words, dog
I
and
was
cat.
thinking, yeah, the wires are being
Let
crossed here. It's Friday. Um, okay. And then a Black person walks up to me and I administer the test and I'm like, read this Bible backwards,
uh-huh.
and upside down, and do 2 pages of it, or whatever, right? So discriminatory impact of the test. The test may look facially even like fair. Oh, we want people to be able to read in order to vote. Nonsense. But anyway, I wish that was the case for real. Uh,
Now we're like, actually, maybe that's not such a
maybe.
terrible idea.
Full circle over here. And so anyway, so these tests were done in the South. There are poll taxes to be paid that when you walked up to me and you were Black, I would ask you for money to vote, things like that. And it got so bad, and it's like whack-a-mole. Okay, so you're like, it's illegal to discriminate against Black people, but if the election already happens and the lawsuit comes years later, then or months later, then the damage is already done. And
Mhm.
very oftentimes, when you would find something like count the bubbles thing, you'd be like, okay, the 2 years later, a court would be like, that is a discriminatory, impact on voting
Practice.
and
Mhm.
practice. That's right. And um, they would just change like the law by one sentence or by one word and be like, it's a new law now. And you're just playing this whack-a-mole. And so what the Voting Rights Act did, and let's just also rewind there, 1965, Voting Rights Act. It's not just in the law, guys. It is a seminal moment in American history that we all know. We've all watched Forrest Gump. We've all seen the I Have a Dream speech on the mall. We have, read about the Montgomery bus boycotts. We've read about Selma. We've watched movies about Selma.
Mhm.
And all of that work, that organizing, the deaths, the violence, all of that civil disobedience, all culminated in this one law. And the law said that Black men and women in the South should be able to vote. And here's how we're going to do it. We're going to make sure, both preemptively and post-actively, that these places that have now a hundreds-year history of discrimination in the South are not allowed to change voting laws that have a discriminatory impact ex ante, beforehand. It's called preclearance. And so that was one big chunk of the law, the preclearance section. And John Roberts, about a decade and a half ago, in the Shelby decision, dismantled that component of the law, saying that that history is long past. Just like you said about some of our readers, like our listeners, Civil War is a long time ago. Sure, we're still living with the legacy of it. Racism still exists. And
Also, just for what it's worth, a long time ago in the history of our country is a very short time,
it's still a very
right?
short
Like,
time.
it's a very, very short time. And when you consider we're just a couple of generations removed, right? Like, it's not that long. The ideology remains, the systems remain, the impact remains, even still to this day. It's what we're dealing with right now. So yeah, I mean,
And can I
good
say,
call out.
yeah, and can I say something personal? Honestly,
Yeah.
I was born in Mississippi. I grew up in Indiana. My family we emigrated from India. They emigrated from India. I was born here. But we went to Colts games, growing up. We went to the Indy 500. I've been to the Indy 500 27 times
Oh, wow.
in my life. It's like a family thing because it's such a big deal. And something really dramatically changed in the last few years for us. I can tell you this from personal experience. I go to Colts games with my fam. My ba like wears a blue sari still to this day when the Colts play on Sunday. It's such a family thing. But I can get uncomfortable now.
Mm,
And it starts at the top. That up till 2016, we lived here and we lived in rural Indiana, and not a problem. Like everyone was part of this thing, or at least something was subdued. Um, I think something that MAGA has made me feel is that culturally, it's like there are some people out there now that are proud to be overtly racist, overtly proud of like white nationalism. And it starts at the top. I don't know if you remember, I'm sure most people don't, but like when John McCain was running against Barack Obama, and I was working on that campaign, the Barack Obama campaign in 2008. So one lady at a town hall raised her hand and said, I think Barack Obama, I'm worried about him. He's like a Arab Muslim terrorist.
yes.
And he stopped her on her tracks and he goes, "No, ma'am, do not say that." John McCain said this, okay? "No,
Mhm.
ma'am, do not say that. I know him. You should not be fearful. He's a good family man. We have differences about the direction of our country, but he's a good man and a good family person." Could you imagine the president of the United States today, Donald Trump, saying that
No. And
instead of
and
pouring
that's
fuel on the fire?
mhm.
And
Well, I
so
mean,
I think,
he by the way, so no one forgets, Donald Trump was the fuel on the
yeah,
"Be scared of Barack Obama" fire. He
yeah,
was
and that,
the birther movement. I mean, that was
yeah.
Trump.
So that trickles down even onto me and my
Mhm.
I personally feel it. I see it. I go to Broadway in Tennessee, in Nashville, to the like country music bars. I love country music, and the last few years feels like super odd to be stared at sometimes on purpose.
Yeah.
Anyway,
No.
okay, this is relevant to to this because you have a Ruth Bader Ginsburg uh, picture up behind you, and in the Shelby decision, she dissented about throwing out this pre-clearance requirement, throwing out this thing. And in a weird, ironic way, guys, the Voting Rights Act works so well that we almost stopped needing it because it works so well. And she said,
For those of you listening, he said stop needing it with air quotes.
"Oh,
Not
sorry,
not
yeah,
for real.
yeah,
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 no,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
I
yeah.
just want to make sure that no one's listening going like,
I
well,
got you, I got
yeah.
you. Yeah, yeah." So she said, throwing out, the Voting Rights Act is like throwing out your umbrella in the rain because you're not getting wet. And I think it's one of my favorite lines ever.
Yeah, that's
And it's so good. She's such a boss. So, so that happened, and so we're looking at a situation where slowly this Supreme Court was chipping away at this thing, and then last week they dealt the final blow. By the way, the Voting Rights Act, to be factual, is not repealed. It is
Mm.
not gone. It's still in force, but the dramatic nature by which they changed how they evaluated, Supreme Court did, undid, you know, decades of organizing work, thought, that went into this thing. And so anyway, now, you can redraw districts in the South. Basically, I'm trying to go like super TLDR. You can redraw districts in the
Yeah.
South and take race not into account, by essentially taking it into account. So
Well,
black voters overwhelmingly vote Democratic. Okay, in the South especially. And that is essentially why, and if you look at a town like Montgomery or Birmingham or Memphis or Nashville, black voters are very concentrated. Atlanta, very concentrated into cities, and at least we drew lines to make sure that they could elect a black congressperson. And as of last week, we can no longer actually legally draw lines to take that into account.
their
And
race.
all
You can't
these
take their race into account
race into
as you
account,
draw those
right?
lines. Yeah.
Yes.
But
So
for what about for people who say, well, we shouldn't take race into account?
no, I completely understand in a dream world, that's true. We shouldn't take race into account. And I don't want to make everything like I do have a hot take here that I think is gonna sound really crazy as a soundbite at some point, but this could be a good thing in the end, to me. Because what has happened in practice in the South is that, given that black voters vote overwhelmingly Democratic, like 9 out of 10 voters, so race and party kind of melded together, and you've got all these super, you know, not just regular Republican Congress people and members in the South. Now you have super MAGA ones. Okay, I'm gonna start another air quotes, guys. Regular Republican versus MAGA is something in my head. Call it Mitt Romney versus Ted Cruz, right? And there's a fundamental difference. I think we all know, and so uh, remember one thing, everyone: gerrymandering does not create new voters; it just moves them around. And while it is easy to slice and dice districts to get to 51%, if you distribute voters around more evenly, then in a wave year, which possibly this year is turning out to be like one, then even quote unquote safe districts can be overwhelmed by a big wave when you add enough other voters to it. So let's take this in practice to keep it like simple. Imagine a pie, and this just happened this morning, so I'm going to use this example. But the Tennessee had one Democratic representative from Memphis, and what they're going to do is redraw the lines of the Tennessee congressional map to um, to split that Memphis district into 3 pieces. So it just kind of like a pie goes down to the center of the city, and then like a wedge, goes out into the suburbs. Now, those voters didn't disappear. They're going to be added to these new 3 districts. And while those new 3 districts are going to be Republican, all of a sudden, those Congress members now have a couple 100,000 Democratic voters now in their district. They have to be a little more careful about being wacky, about, being
Do
overtly racist.
do you think that they're going to be a little more careful though if their districts are still overwhelmingly Republican? It just becomes, to me, this idea that like I don't have to worry about any of these people because they're never going to be enough of them to vote me out, and
Well,
therefore now
Mallory,
I just don't care.
okay, so I guess let me do the math again, or to make it more clear. So their districts are already overwhelmingly Republican, incredibly Republican. Let's call it, I'm going to use some letters here. So when a district is D+1 or R+6 or whatever I'm saying, that means that in the last presidential election, um, a D+1 district voted for Kamala Harris by 1% more than Donald Trump. Or an R+10 district voted for Donald Trump over Kamala Harris by 10 points, okay? So now what we're about to do is take these Tennessee districts. I'm just throwing out numbers, but this is probably, I mean, it's accurate. I don't know the exact numbers, but we're about to take these R+15 districts that were super Republican. Now I'm taking a bunch of Democratic voters and splitting them into 3 parts from Memphis and putting them in each one. So the R+15 becomes an R+7, right? They got a lot more Democratic voters in it. So I agree with you that they still are pretty safe, and that's unfortunate. But the laws of political gravity dictate that over time, some enterprising person like you, Mallory, or me, who has both run for office, for Congress, is going to show up and be like, oh, what if I become a little more moderate and I can corral all these Democratic voters plus some of these moderate, normie Republican voters and beat this guy? That will happen. And so, the voters, again, are just getting moved around. You're not creating new voters. And that's my
Yeah,
hope here.
I think that what you're saying, that maybe to say it a little differently, is that it's just going to create better competition, right?
That's
It's going to pull people back from the fringe potentially, and encourage potentially Democrats in those districts to organize a little bit better, to get their shit together, and then Republicans are going to be met with competition. They're going to be met with
yeah.
that ideology and be forced to pull themselves back from MAGA land
Yeah.
or fringe space. That could be an
I hope so.
interesting. That could be an interesting
outcome.
That could be an interesting development. Yeah.
Yeah, that could be an interesting outcome. And I'm not gonna lie, like I think that it's a little wishful thinking for us to be like, this is gonna happen now. But it took 60 years for these districts and these parties to calcify the way they did. So I'm not talking about in the next 2, 4, 6 years, but I'm talking about over the very long run. That's just math, you know what I mean? And competition, and that's how markets work. And
What about
look, I once worked at a law firm in law school, and John Roberts was the senior partner in my law firm. And it's actually interesting because he was a whip smart, insanely smart, charming person, as we all know. But he's super obsessed with this. And I don't think he's a bad person personally. Obviously, I actually think like he might also long way think this, but I'm also maybe just giving too much credit. I don't know.
potentially?
I don't know.
And even if he does, it does the rest of the country. I mean,
No.
I started out this episode by saying a representative in Alabama this week said, no longer in hoods and sheets, now they're in suits and ties. And so, even if the smartest people think that this will in the long run be the outcome, the short term impact is still there, right?
It's going to be discriminatory. Yeah, we're going to lose a bunch of black representatives. Let's just put it that way.
Yes,
and a bunch of people are going to lose. Yeah.
But you mentioned the math, right? And I have seen floating around, I didn't pull it, that there is some hope for Democratic states, majority Democratic states, to do the same thing, basically, like redistrict their states so that our members of Congress have the ability to sort of even back out or potentially even stay similar to where we're at. Do you have any thoughts on that, or have you seen that
Yeah, I
math?
also think I was gonna, but sorry. Also tell our listeners, like, I don't want to be unfair here. Democrats are also doing gerrymandering, and I can say that they started it. I can actually factually say that Republicans started this in the mid 2000s, in the middle of a decade. The Texas Republicans first did a mid-decade redistricting, first time in 200 years, and they have been very aggressive about it. And to be honest, Democrats have sponsored and tried to pass legislation over and over and over, making everyone ban it. But these guys won't. The Republicans won't
Banning
sign on.
gerrymandering.
Very
Yeah.
gerrymandering. Yeah.
So wait,
So
just to take it
Democratic
back.
states
So
are
what you were saying that Texas started this in the mid 2000s by doing a mid-decade, therefore in
redistricting.
between the census, which is what we started talking about in the beginning of the episode, that the redistrictings used to happen in the census. And I'm not sure how many people know this. So just so you know, congressional districts and the districts for your state house and state senate representatives, they're all based on numbers. And so this is about how they're carving up numbers. So a congressional district has somewhere between 700 and 750,000 people in it. So you may be looking at a state like Alabama. A congressional district is a large large swath of land, because we only have 5 million people in this state spread across the entire state. Whereas in New York City, where you live, 750,000 people can live in a 5-block radius or whatever.
My district is 3 miles long.
Yeah.
By like 4 miles wide.
So that looks different in every state, but every time that the redistricting has happened, it's been based upon the census. And so when Texas did this mid-decade, that's what he means by they started it. They started doing this at times when it was not normal, I guess, to do that. And we also saw that it was last year or the year before that Texas did it again, and the Texas State House reps walked out, and that's what started all of this. That's what started California.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then
California came back.
Yeah, and now Virginia, and so we got blue states, we got red states, we got people carving up maps everywhere. The guys writing the rules.
It's chaos.
It's chaos. It's chaos. But in fact, that's what's scary, guys. Actually, another takeaway here: Congress has about a 20% approval rating, if not lower,
Mm-hmm.
and yet 95% of incumbents get reelected. So in fact, it's unchaos. What they're doing essentially is making sure that incumbents win, regardless of which party in each party, and or keeps the system perpetuating that all of us seemingly are unhappy with.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be this way, because I want to switch gears. Okay, it's like, what can we do? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So Germany, Australia, England, all these modern democracies have different systems that tackled this problem. And we used to have one too. You can elect at large. Let's say Alabama. You have 10 reps? No, less.
We have 7 right now. We're going to go back to
yeah,
losing a Democratic representative. But anyway, go ahead.
But in total, yeah. So imagine a system called proportional at-large representation. You go to the voting booth in Alabama and you vote for 8 people. And everyone votes for 8 people. DR next to your name, doesn't matter. Maybe we could put it there, whatever. And the top 8 people go to Congress. And that's at large. So if 40% of people voted for the Democratic people and 60%, like, it would proportionally go like that. It's a much more rational system.
So you're saying there's no districts. It's just you have
whole state.
Alabama has 20 people who want to go to Congress, and you get to choose the top 8.
Exactly. And now here's what happens in that case. In practice, someone can run as the conservative guy. Someone can run as the ideas guy. Someone can run as the black guy. Someone can run as the mom. And geography doesn't matter. If 8 people go up there and win, they know who got them there, and they become representative of that coalition. And That eliminates gerrymandering. That's one option. I'm not throwing out like, oh, let's
It
just
also
do
seems
that.
like it kind of just eliminates two parties.
It absolutely does. You
Yeah.
nailed it. So there's a law of politics that says the number of parties there will be one, will be the number of seats winnable plus one. That's
Hmm.
all makes sense, right? So if there are 9 districts, then there'll probably be 10 viable parties because, again, that's how markets work. People, we know that in Coca-Cola and Pepsi. We know that in like our real
Hmm.
lives. Every day you go to the grocery store and there's like 100 cereals for a reason. There's, you have an infinite number of cereals you can buy. And if you can only choose one, then there's going to be 2 cereals. One will subsume the other
Yeah. Hmm.
competition. Okay. So put it that way, a better system, an option would be to do proportional at-large voting. Or maybe you carve a district, big state like New York or California into, upstate and downstate. And in New York, instead of me being very randomly line drawn by block, it's like, let me just choose the top 3 people I like in Manhattan.
Hmm.
And those and 10 people can run. And you get to be now rational about what coalition you're building. So that's one option. Okay.
Well, it
And
also just forces the voter to actually have a better understanding of who they're voting for instead of just putting a letter
one of the
next to
2
it. I
options.
mean,
Yeah, I'm no two. We like
here
options.
here in Alabama, we have straight ticket voting. So there are people who have no idea who's on their ballot. They just go in and bubble R. They have no idea.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah. So, I mean, it gives you the voters' choice. Choice means I'm actually like very hopeful about voters. And so I think they behave the way the system that's built around them does. So it's like sometimes it's just rational to be like, yeah, let me just click the R and leave because I don't know enough about this. But that's also because they don't have choices.
Yeah.
If I gave you 10 choices, you might be into actually, like someone might actually speak to you. Someone might
Hmm.
actually be your person. Odds are. So, okay. So that's one option. And I wanted to like not and say like everything is terrible. It is not great right now, but the night
That's
is
also a very long shot option. It's a
yeah,
great
yeah.
idea that I would love
So
to see implemented in my lifetime.
it used to happen. Okay, so before 1840, we did at-large voting in America. And one thing that's true is that some of these debates now clear the way for, okay, what's next? This is not a tenable situation where both parties are constantly gerrymandering back and forth against each other every single year going forward. And the Democrats are now fighting fire with Republicans and doing it too. And so there is now going to be a debate. And if you want to do something, then there are organizations like Fair Fight and others. Remember I said that this is the only game where the players are the umpires? So I don't count on them to do these reforms. But many states have referendums and direct democracy systems where a ballot question can be put out there that says, should Virginia switch to at-large voting, proportional voting? Should Virginia switch to ranked choice voting? And then the voters directly get to choose that. And there are efforts underway, guys, state by state, to do some things like this. And
Hmm.
so sometimes when the courts take it out of our hands, they want us to now organize again and to make the reforms we want via ballot and via new representatives. And I hate the takeaway is always vote, do your
Hmm.
research, organize, knock doors, call your neighbors. Like this shouldn't be that hard, but it is.
Hmm.
We live, in a really polarized time and a polarized democracy right now. And I think the only thing you can do is to educate, empower, um, inform, and
Yeah.
hope.
Yeah. Well, thank you for helping everybody better understand how we got here and potentially what some ideas are for how we could move forward and even some tangible efforts. You brought up Fair Fight. For those of you who are listening, Max Flugrath was on. He's the communications director from Fair Fight. He was on a couple of weeks ago talking about not only the SAVE Act, but the effort to disenfranchise college voters across college campuses across the country. So Fair Fight is a great organization to get involved in. They are based out of Georgia, but they're working across the country, specifically in organizing folks and messaging. So if you want to get involved, check out Fair Fight's website.
Oh,
Also,
hey, sorry. I
no,
want
go
to do
ahead.
another shout out. Equal Justice Initiative,
Yes, EJI here in Alabama.
EJI in Alabama. I thought about Alabama. My law school professor Brian Stevenson is the head or the founder,
He
and
has he just as a aside, he's got an incredibly powerful speech that's been circulating the internet this past week. So
oh, nice. I
Google
didn't know
him.
that.
Yeah.
Okay, I will
Yeah.
do that again. I get to, that was a privilege to get to see that every morning, every two mornings a week in
Yeah.
for a semester. But anyway, just throwing it out there because everything voting is incredibly important and representation is incredibly important. And that's why so many people died for the Voting Rights Act. But while they got that away, there are still lots of other issues that'll emanate from that, including unequal justice in the justice
The justice
system.
system. Hmm.
Yeah, and so there are organizations like that to put your time into.
Yeah. EJI is incredible. And if you haven't been to both the museum and the memorial in Montgomery, if you haven't done that, it's a really powerful way to spend an afternoon. Um, yeah, I think that it's really important to remember that like none of this happens overnight. And we started talking about the civil rights movement and, the Montgomery bus boycott. It was a year long. So for those of you who are still not going to Target, think about that times a million. It's up to us to hold true to our values and hold people accountable, the people who represent us. And it may seem difficult. I think about the conversations I have here in our state, how people feel so defeated because they're just Republicans. They're going to do whatever they want. We have no say. But the truth of the matter is that we are also a state that's about 60-40. And when you organize and you pull some of those people in our direction, I know that there are 10% of people in Alabama who are rational thinkers who can be convinced that this is not the direction that our government should go and our country should go. And just speaking about it from our state's perspective, you can have one of the most bipartisan senators in the history of our Senate, Doug Jones, or you can have Tommy Tuberville, who doesn't even know the three branches of government. Like I can assure you that Alabama is a microcosm of everywhere else. There are those 10% of people, 11% of people who will think rationally about this election and about the people who represent them, but they have to have conversations. If you're a person listening, you have to talk to the people around you, help them understand why these things are important and that they take our effort, right? Like
Yeah,
it's up to us to
I
make
don't
these
like. I
things
mean,
happen.
I came of political age with the Obama speech. There are no red states and blue states. I believe that because I grew up just like you, in Indiana, Mississippi, red states. But you know what? I like my friends. I like my family. Everyone that's there, and I don't think that anyone's like overtly bad person, and frankly at all. And when you're talking about 4 out of 10, even the most polarized state, blue or red, that means if you walk down the street, the odds are you're going to find almost 50-50 chance, closer to 50-50 chance, that someone's agrees with you, and that means that there's persuasion needs to happen. You can talk to people. It's important. So you
Mm-hmm.
reminded me of Tommy Tuberville, and I was like, that's the dog ate the cat sentence person.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's the person that we're like, maybe reading wouldn't be so bad. No.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining today. If you're listening, I hope you took away some interesting knowledge and also understanding of where we're at and then also what you can do about it. We'll see you next time.
Peace. See you guys.